What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I'm back with another Unearthed Arcana review. Full stop, this is one of the most confusing and convoluted Unearthed Arcana reviews I'm ever going to do. I like it in concept, but I think it would be an absolute nightmare to run at a table, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about Greyhawk Initiative, or at least that's what they're calling it. Mike Mearls had came up with this, I guess apparently at GaryCon, you know, the birthplace of Gen Con in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And there's been talk about this. He basically has an alternative form of initiative. It's interesting, and I like it in theory, but in actual play, I think I'd be pulling my hair out, and I think you obviously cannot even come close to doing this with new players, and even some veteran players may change their mind. So, let's take a look. Let me know what you guys think. Basically, the concept is initiative is no longer set in stone, where you roll initiative at the start of the turn, and it changes every round. The process behind this is that it adds fluidity to the gameplay, or I guess not fluidity per se, because it could bog it down. It adds variability, is what I was going for, to the gameplay. So, basically, there's this whole thing here, turns and variable turn order. I'm going to give you my interpretation, and I think I do a pretty good job of understanding this. Every round in combat, so you have a round goes by, then it's the next round. Each round initiative is determined. Round is basically another way for turn. And you don't use d20s for initiative anymore. You use different dice depending on what you want to do. Initiative count now goes from low to high. But there also is no bonuses to initiative, in that you don't have your dexterity bonus isn't added to anything. I don't believe they took into account the alert feat, which gives you a +5 on your initiative, which doesn't really fit into this system. And there's advantage and disadvantage. Kind of work the same, but I'll talk about it a little bit later. So, and then, you know, things that have durations that last until the end of a turn, last until the end of a round, things that have the start of a turn or happen at the start of the round. If you're surprised, it adds a 10 to your initiative. And you can't take reactions while you're surprised. And you're surprised until the end of the round. So, first of all, things are broken down by speed. As you can see here, this is the crux of it. Ranged attacks do a d4. Movement does a d6, swapping gear does a d6, and any other action does a d6. When it says any other actions, it means anything that's not a ranged attack, a melee attack, or casting a spell. Casting a spell being a d10, melee attacks being a d8. You may roll multiple dice. The process being, I want to move and make a melee attack, I'm going to roll a d6 and a d8. And you roll those together to determine your initiative. I want to move and cast a spell, you get the point. I want to stow my gear and draw a sword and a shield, 2d6, I make a melee attack, a d8. You now, delaying, there's no ready actions anymore, but there is now delayed you can delay your turn, and they kind of go over it here. People roll for initiative, and they want to delay their turn till after somebody else goes, and then they can do that. There's an option here for variant of weapon speed, meaning rather than tying it to this table, maybe it's tied to the weapon speed. You know, what spells are still a d10, but like if you want to swing with a greatsword because it's heavier, it's 2d6 to attack, whereas a dagger is a d4. Bonus actions. If you want to use bonus action, you roll an additional die that corresponds to the type of action. So if you want to use a bonus action to cast a spell, it's a d10. Action Surge basically doesn't function in this. If you have anything that adds an additional action that's not a bonus action, it doesn't affect it. Initiative covers only the actions you take on your turn, so using a reaction has no effect on your initiative roll. You can take one reaction per round as normal. Likewise, any activities that you're forced to undertake have no effect on your initiative. You can delay, as we said. If you want to sheath a weapon, drop a weapon, roll an additional d6 on your initiative, like we said. And if you're unable to act because you're incapacitated, you don't roll initiative. But you can still do things like saving throws and whatnot. If you can control another creature, whether it be through a minion or domination or something like that, you roll separate for those. You roll initiative for the actions you have to plan, the creature take, then add the result to your initiative. The final result is the creature's initiative roll. In a general, if an effect causes a creature to change its actions and has not yet taken a turn, the creature rerolls its initiative and adds the result to the initiative. And then basically you have to declare what you're going to do at the start of your turn. So if you say, I want to make a melee attack, you can say that and then roll initiative, but if there's nothing for you to hit within range, you didn't declare that you were going to take a movement, so you can't attack anything. And because you said you were going to make a melee attack, if there's nothing to melee attack, you just basically wasted your turn. So sometimes it behooves you to say, I'm going to take a movement action. Even if you choose not to, you still have it counted in your declaration. If you tie for initiative, it goes by highest dexterity. If it's tied, you roll a random die to determine who goes first. There's an optional rule for spell disruption from AD&D. If you, say, get hit before you're able to let a spell cast, you're only limited to cantrips. Here we go. Initiative, penalties, and bonuses. So it doesn't apply if an effect would grant you a bonus to your initiative under the standard system. Instead, reduce the size of one die. Okay, so D6 becomes a D4, D4 becomes a D3, and so on. In case of penalty to initiative, go the other way, increasing the die. Advantage and disadvantage still determined on your highest die roll. If you have advantage, you roll twice and take the lower number. If you have disadvantage, you roll twice and take the higher number. And then they go into a full scenario of 4 rounds of combat. I'm gonna high level go over this. There are some things that I think are funny. So basically, a cleric, a fighter, sorceress, and a bard get into a fight in a hallway with a troll and some hobgoblins. The hallway's 10 feet wide, and they decide they're going to roll for initiative. So basically, here's what happens. The fighter decides that he's going to charging forward to block the passage. The wizard said she's going to support him by casting a spell, and the bard's going to fire a longbow. The DM determines the troll's going to charge ahead and make an attack, and the hobgoblins are going to make ranged attacks, and one is going to move and make an attack. So, Rupert says Rupert is the bard, he's going to make a ranged attack without moving, so he only rolls a d4. So he rolls and gets a 1. The sorceress decides she's going to cast a spell, so she rolls a d10, gets a 7. The fighter decides that he's going to move and make an attack, so he rolls a d6 for the move and a d8 for the attack, getting a 14. He doesn't roll an extra d8 because action surge doesn't make him make a second attack. The DM decides the troll's going to move and make a melee attack, so it rolls a d6 and a d8. All of the hobgoblins except for one are making ranged attacks with a d4 getting a 2. No, I guess that's just all. They're all making ranged attacks. So the 1 goes first. The bard fires an arrow, hits the troll. All the hobgoblins go, throwing a bunch of javelins because they rolled a 2. Then the priestess casts acid arrow on the troll. The troll rushes forward to hit the dwarf. Now he has a 14. He doesn't have to move because the troll came up to hit him, so he can just attack. So basically choosing to use that movement action ahead of time did nothing for him. He just added higher to his initiative roll. Bard decides to shoot again. Cleric decides to cast, or sorceress decides to cast a spell, and the dwarf decides to make an attack. The troll decides it wants to run away. 5 of the hobgoblins are going to attack, but the 6th decides to make an attack and then move to warn other people. So Bard rolls a d4, gets a 3. Sorceress gets a d10, rolls a d10, gets a 6, and the fighter decides to just make an attack, so he rolls a d8. The troll decides to move and use the disengage action. The disengaged action is one other action, so it's 2d6. He gets a lucky 2. The hobgoblins roll a 4, and the hobgoblin that's moving away rolls a d4 and a d6 for movement, getting a total of 8. Troll runs away. Fighter doesn't get an attack of opportunity because he used disengage. The bard fires, hits the troll. All the hobgoblins make an attack with their 4. The priest or the sorceress casts her spell, Ray of Frost, to hit the fleeing hobgoblin. The fighter wishes he could. This is my favorite line. He His player makes a point of asking the DM if optional rules taken from a website of dubious repute are really what the campaign needs, but the character can still do nothing on his turn. The DM reminds all the players that they can always roll an initiative die to move in case they end up needing to do so on a round, though they increase the chance of acting later in the round if they choose to do so. So because he only rolled to make a melee attack and his source of attacking is gone, he can do nothing because he didn't choose to make a roll to move. And then the final hobgoblin throws its javelin and then moves away. Get to the next round. It's weird because it kind of almost breaks initiative order, but not really. So the fighter needs healing. He decides to move an attack. D6, D8. Sorceress decides to cast a spell. Rolls a D10. The Bard decides to make a ranged attack, move, and cast a spell as a bonus action. So D4 for the ranged attack, D10 for the spell casting, and a D6 for the movement. Hobgoblins decide to, while the fleeing hobgoblins opts to only move, it could take the dash action, but doing so would increase its initiative to 2d6. The attacking hobgoblins roll a total of 12 on moving for the D8 and a D6. The moving hobgoblin just moves for a D6, and the troll also continues to flee with a D6. We get into round 3. The fleeing hobgoblin and the troll both move, scuttling out of sight of the sorceress. However, the hobgoblin can't because he was hit with Ray of Frost. It's her turn. She drops the hobgoblin with a firebolt. Troll's out of sight, so she can't hit it. The fighter rushes forward and smashes into a hobgoblin, dropping one. His confidence ebbs as the remaining hobgoblins all act ahead of the healing bard, attack the fighter. I really wish they didn't name them Rupert and Wrath. The names are 2 R's for this scenario. It's kind of annoying. So finally, at the end, the bard gets to act. He hits a hobgoblin with an arrow, pushes forward to block the hallway, and then heals the fighter with Healing Word. Finally, the final round, the bard decides to stow away his longbow, take out a sword and shield, and then make a melee attack. The fighter decides to make a melee attack and move if necessary, and the sorceress decides to cast a spell. The fighter rolls a D8 and a D6 for the move and the attack. The sorceress rolls a D10 to make the spell, and then the bard rolls a D6 and a D8 to stow an attack. The hobgoblins have had enough of the characters. They all opt to disengage, rolling a total of 6 on 2d6. As the fight draws to a close, Rupert and Wrath both hack at the hobgoblins, dropping 2 more of them. Wrath decides he does not need to move. The remaining hobgoblins successfully disengage, but stop short of the corner. The sorceress reviews her spell options and hits them with a sleep spell, dropping them before they can escape. Wounded Troll running away. The dungeon and hobgoblins defeated. The party decides to make a quick retreat before the enemies ahead are warned. As you can see, this system has 2 big effects on the combat. It makes on-the-fly actions, such as attempting to stop the fleeing hobgoblins, more uncertain. It also turns each round of combat into a miniature tactical scenario, with the players conferring about their goals for the round and their general plan of attack. The biggest hazard under the system is ending up in a situation where you cannot take a useful action. So when in doubt, roll a die to give yourself the option to move. In most cases, acting a little later in the round is a fair trade for the security of knowing you can close with a foe if you need to. Having to create a plan with your fellow players to work together and defeat your enemies means the coordination is critical. As such, you must weigh the benefits and risks of each action you might take in a single round. As seen in the example above, healing in combat can easily become a risky proposition. One bad roll can be the difference between delivering a spell in time or seeing an ally fall under your enemy's attacks. First of all, can I say that this is probably going to triple your combat time. If you're playing in a combat-heavy campaign, just add an extra minimum of an hour, I would say, to your campaign, to your playtime. Because sometimes, as it is, doing a combat takes long enough when you're trying to coordinate. If you need to coordinate every round to determine what you're going to do, it's just going to slog the game down, I feel like. And again, the DM also needs to be thinking on the fly about what they want to do. Otherwise, their big bad could have nothing to do because they decided to not take a move action and everybody disengaged and now they're out of the range of all the attacks. like I said from the beginning, I really like it in theory. I guarantee you I will never play with this. Again, it's only for veteran players. As someone who does streaming and videos, you absolutely, I feel like, cannot play with this. Because it's going to just be people sitting around trying to determine what to do, and nothing's going to happen. As it is, looking back at my old videos, it's almost cringeworthy to me when I see us stop the game to flip through and read the rule book to figure out what happened. If it's something that you can't make a relatively quick call on or you don't know what it is, it's boring for people to watch. So you want to be able to keep things snappy and keep things moving. And this, I feel, could be great for a home game where you have, like, if you have buddies who come in for a weekend and you do marathon play sessions every day over the course of a weekend. This, or, you get together on a Saturday and you play for 6 hours. Maybe you could use this and use it effectively. Or, again, maybe at a convention where you're doing nothing but gaming. I don't see myself doing this. I like the idea of the dynamic combat system where things change. It's sort of almost... But the way this is written almost makes me feel like I'm playing a Palladium game. Where everything is wonky and there's so many roles and everything's confusing. Because that was sort of, I think, the process, I believe, if I recall, for Palladium games. Where attacks with certain weapons would go first based on their weapon speed. There were a lot of things like that where you systems where you declare your actions ahead of time and certain actions happen before other actions, unless you choose to take the optional rules where you roll initiative. And in most of those games, I would choose the optional rule where I roll initiative and use that instead because it's easier to keep track of. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Let me know what you guys think. Is this something you're going to use at your table? Do you think... Am I crazy in thinking that this is too complicated and going to slow down games? Does this make you guys nostalgic for older editions and things you really want to get back to? I don't know. Me personally, rolling for initiative and the way things are handled now is fairly standard in my mind. And again, like I said, combat takes long enough as it is. I can't imagine trying to get to this system, but like I said, maybe it's just me. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say. So let me know, do you like this system? Do you think it's stupid? Will you ever use it in your game? Maybe for a one-shot, this could be fun to, give it a try, but I feel like that would be the extent of it. Unless, your players, or you as the DM, are, overly in love with it in practicality and an actual play. But like I said, for me, I can't really see me doing this. So, anyway, guys, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.